Sony Alpha 1, an absolute beast. Sony just kind of, I wasn't really keeping up because I literally just got the Sony A7S III, which is actually being used to record this. And I know E's also using it. So we are Sony users. We've been Sony users on the camera side of things for many, many years now. Absolutely love what they do on the camera side of things. They dropped the Sony Alpha 1. Now I'm going to give you a quick rundown of some of the key specifications of the Sony Alpha 1. We've got a 50.1 megapixel full frame Exmor RS CMOS sensor. This is a new sensor. You can have up to 30 frames a second continuous shooting at 50 megapixels, right? So, when I put that on there, 30 and people are like, what, only 30 frames a second? No, we're not talking video, we're talking photography. The burst that you're going to be able to get on there, especially if you're somebody that's a sports photographer, a wildlife photographer, you're going to absolutely love that. 8K up to 30 frames a second, 10-bit 420, and that is up to 30 minutes. It's been tested up to 30 minutes at room temperature. Obviously, with the R5 from Canon, there's been lots of overheating issues, so this is going to be really interesting. 4K 120p at 10-bit 422, 15 stops of dynamic range, 759 autofocus points with 92% coverage, and there's actually 120 autofocus calculations happening per second, which is insane. 5-axis optical image stabilization. We've got zero blackout, silent shooting. But when I saw all of that, I was just like, whoa, mind blown, and I was just like super excited. But then there's a few things that also came along with that. Firstly, the price. Starting price, body only, £6,500 or $6,500. So it's very, very high. And the other thing that for me as well, which was definitely a downside, is that it's got no vari-angle display. So the display is like what's on the Sony A7S II, I believe, and the Sony A7 III, where it can just go up and down, right? It can't go off to the side and go full 360, which is something that we value a lot. So that's for me. Like, I was like super excited, but then those two things kind of like made me sit back down. Though, okay, maybe it's not the one for me. What are your initial impressions, E?
I mean, I like all the specs on the camera, but it really is not for us. Just the camera alone with the megapixel count and the image sensor size. This is a shooter first. This is aimed for the guys who do wildlife and all that in
Sports.
sports. Yeah. So this kind of goes back to a large degree, the articulating screen really doesn't matter for that crowd. It really doesn't.
I'd argue, because I would love to actually have a proper survey done with the target audience of these, because we are now in a day and age that, a lot of photographers and videographers now have to do a lot of stuff, shoot stuff on site, where they have to potentially do a piece to camera, and just that flexibility of a display that can not only go up and down. Yes, it's off to the side, and this is something that I believe Sony, one of the arguments is that a lot of pro photographers like to have the display centerpiece, whether they're whether they're using it up or down. Sometimes they might want to kind of get something that's high, so they're using that, but they still want it to the center. They don't want it to be off to the side, which I kind of understand, but I'm still confident that most people, even professional photographers that I've spoken to, would rather have a display that is a full swivel display that can do everything potentially. Yes, it's off to the side, understandable, but that would be a preference compared to this up and down thingy. I would love to actually see, Sony, if you're watching, please, and you're listening, please do a proper detailed survey across your users and base that on what you want, on the future cameras to have. Because
the
Sony A7S III right now with the flip out screen, I can see myself right now. I don't need to connect an external monitor, and fair enough. Yes, sometimes you get the best out of an external monitor. Actually, I just thought about this.
Yeah,
they want to push the Sony.
I was about to say that by saying
okay. This makes sense. This makes sense.
So But okay, so the Sony Xperia Pro, it's priced at $2,400. Let's set that price aside for a second. Just the capabilities with the camera is the most important part with that phone. And one of the things that they talked about was the instant dumping, uploading, and I can see that especially if you're a wildlife photographer and you set that up and you're shooting, you're waiting for, I was gonna say waiting for a lion, but you don't want to be too close. Maybe you're looking, maybe you're looking at some birds like some pelicans down the way, and you're capturing shots, and it's immediately, that's the functionality you're bringing to that crowd. The other thing too, I think, is that I when I looked at this camera, part of me just went like, this is just a different category. Like it's a different set of customers, a very different set. It's not the same. I think it's just because the tech world now, and especially the YouTube world, is in love with cameras in the sense like what's the newest, what's the best. So to some degree, I agree with you with the articulating screen, but to another degree, I really think they did a proper study, but I think the survey, but I think they did a survey within that category, not across all Sony. They just said, okay, the guys who used our A9 and all this kind of cameras, here you go, tell us what you want. And they didn't mention articulating screen, or maybe they said they didn't want it or they didn't care. And Sony's like, cool, we'll keep it, as opposed to like every Sony user. And I think that's what they did.
I'd like to see a more detailed survey happen there, but I think the Sony Xperia Pro may have been one of the factors there as well, because it's like, hey, you're gonna buy it with the Sony Xperia Pro anyway, so that is an external monitor essentially, so you can just have that however you want. So yeah, I don't know if that was part of it. Nevertheless, I love seeing competition in this space. We love cameras, we use cameras all the time, and being able to have lots of options is great. I'm personally looking forward to the A7 IV, which I think will, if it does have that flip out display, because that was one of the only things that really was a downside for me, because I absolutely loved it as a stills photography camera as well, because it had 24 megapixels. It meant that, because I do lots of photography as well, and I know lots of people say that, hey, if you're going to throw something up on Instagram, then 12 megapixels on the Sony A7 S3 is fine. But for me particularly, I do lots of editing on my images, and sometimes I'll crop a picture which looks completely different to the original, and I like having that 24 megapixel resolution. So I'm also looking forward to the Sony A7 IV if that comes at some point. I think that will be really something that people are gonna look forward to, and it's gonna appeal to a lot more of the not only the tech YouTuber audience, but a lot of the upcoming content creators, should we say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I can't wait to see what happens. I was gonna say next year, but sorry, this year with the 4 series, and if we get that at some point. But honestly, though, Sony's riding high. They might just decide to just take a break for a year.
They've been doing great. I mean, I gotta say, on the camera side of things, they've been doing great. Love the A7S III so far. Looking forward to testing it out more. I hope you enjoyed that clip. If you want to hear the full podcast episode, then that will be linked down below. And if you want to see more clips like this, then be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss them. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on SuperSaf Speaks, and I'll see you next time.